Asahi is a butt-ugly loser who's known as the biggest snitch to ever exist. However, everything changes when he discovers his crush is a vampire girl, and he has to keep that mouth shut if he ever hopes to hit that. One day, while playing card games with his friends, Asahi tries some cheap telepathy-blocking glasses to keep them from predicting his moves, but it's no use, they could read him like a book. They reminded him that he would always be a basket full of holes larger than your girlfriend's mouth. Asahi had always had this problem, and everyone knew it. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't keep secrets or tell lies. However, his friends assured him that though he was the weakest link, they could always believe in him. Later in class, Asahi smiles to himself as he remembers the one secret he's been keeping from everyone. He was down bad for the green-haired goddess named Yuko. There was something mysterious about her. She came to school before anybody else, spent her breaks alone, and was always the last to leave. She was basically his complete opposite. Suddenly, Yuko catches Asahi staring at him, causing him to panic and jump out of his seat. Asahi was so worried that he'd been caught that he didn't even notice the teacher calling out for him. The teacher almost squeezes his pipe in anger, but before she gets that far, Nagisa, the class rep, interrupts and tells her to continue the lesson while warning Asahi to behave. After class, Asahi's friends invite him to lunch, while he watches Yuko reject having lunch with some girls. Then, at gym practice, while the boys watch the girls pin each other down, Asahi wonders why Yuko always sits under a tree and watches. However, a ball knocks the thought right out of him. After school ends, the boys talk outside and ask him when he plans to confess to Yuko. Yuko is a spit take, as he wonders how they could possibly know that, but they say he looks at her like a virgin looks at videos on incognito mode. Asahi confesses that he had been pretty off his game that day, but he's liked her for a long time. However, it's no news to the boys who knew exactly when the crush started. Sakurada bluntly reminds him about his holy basket situation and reminds him about his last train wreck with a girl. Last summer, Nagisa had point-blank told Asahi that she'd rather drink battery acid than go out with him, and this was even before he confessed to her. The boys suggest that to avoid that kind of tragedy, Asahi needs to confess before Yuko rejects him. Asahi starts shaking like a leaf at the thought, but the boys assure him that they'll be there to console him when he inevitably tells him she'd rather date sewer rats. Asahi ignores the vote of zero confidence and runs off to try his luck, while the boys pity the poor fool. However, Sakurada points out that Asahi might just stand a chance because, surprisingly, Yuko stares at him too. Asahi reaches the classroom door where he pulls out the love letter he plans to give her. However, when he opens the door, he finds her spreading her wings and they both scream. She sucks them back in and covers her fangs, and though Asahi tries to assure her he didn't see anything, his face gives it away immediately. Since the snitch already saw her, Yuko confesses that she's actually a vampire and blames herself for being dumb enough to spread her wings at school. Asahi wonders how she doesn't turn to ash in the sunlight, but she says that's just a myth and she just avoids getting a dark tan. Yuko asks if he's scared of her now that he knows, but he says he thinks it's actually cute. Somehow, Yuko's thick skull doesn't pick up on Asahi's feelings, so she tells him she'll have to leave their school now that he knows her secret. Asahi realizes how sad and alone she must have been because of her secret, so he insists that he doesn't want her to leave and offers to keep it a secret instead. He promises to do everything in his power to keep her secret and asks her to be his friend. However, when he realizes he's just sealed himself in the friend zone, Yuko accepts his offer and smashes any hopes of him clawing his way out. That evening, Yuko finds Asahi wet dreaming at the train station, but she ignores the crimson-red flag and tells him she's happy they live in the same neighborhood. Asahi's soul starts ascending to heaven till she reminds him they're just friends, sending him to a hell of his own making. On the way, Asahi reveals that he's nervous that his leaky mouth will reveal her secret, but Yuko tells him not to try so hard since she was already supposed to leave the school. Asahi insists on kissing her ass regardless, and while they bicker, Nagisa watches both of them suspiciously. The next day, the guys ask how his confession went, but instead of a rejection, Asahi tells them he's being friend-zoned. The teacher comes in late, causing Nagisa to nag her. The boys notice Nagisa seems more prickly than usual, and it turns out that it's because of Asahi. After she violated the poor virgin last summer, she couldn't believe he'd already replaced her crusty ass with a shiny new crush. She begins to wonder if he was ever into her in the first place, since she never allowed him to speak that day. After class, she charges up to him and demands to know if he was really in love with her back then. When he says yes, she's relieved that she wasn't going crazy till he realizes what she just asked in front of the whole school. Asahi's friends ask why she's acting desperate, but Nagisa denies it and blames Asahi for being a fickle fool who falls for another girl after he gets rejected. The guys go to Asahi's rescue and drag him away before Nagisa has the chance to give him emotional damage. After school, Yuko and Asahi are finally alone, so she pulls out her lunch and finally gets to chow down. Asahi wonders how she's eating normal food instead of blood, but Yuko thinks he's calling her a cheapo. Asahi apologizes for the misunderstanding, so she explains that for vampires, sucking someone's ketchup is like swearing your love or kissing. When Asahi hears this, he wishes she would suck on his ketchup-covered hot dog. And with a speed she finishes her food, she might have the appetite for it. Suddenly, a box of snacks falls from Asahi's desk and Yuko gladly picks it up to eat. But before he can tell her he didn't put those in, Yuko starts deep-throating the food. Suddenly, she goes batshit crazy, literally, as she laments about the bun being full of hot peppers. Asahi sees that all the buns have something wrong with them, but warns Yuko to hide her wings before anyone else sees. When he rushes to get her some water, he finds Nagisa at the door, who freezes when she sees Yuko on the wall. Yuko falls down devastated while Asahi tries to beg Nagisa to forget what she's seen, but in a shocking plot twist, a tiny Nagisa pops out to ask what planet Yuko's from. Like you, Asahi wonders what the hell is going on, while Nagisa remains focused on Yuko, insisting that she must be some rival race or something. Yuko explains that she's just a vampire, while Asahi calls Nagisa out on being an alien. The two girls sulk over being different flavors of stupid when Asahi asks Nagisa more about herself. She admits she's an alien who rides about in her external unit, but she assures Yuko that she's no snitch like Asahi. Now, since Yuko is not a human, Nagisa technically doesn't have to hide from her, but she has to erase Asahi's memory. She pulls out a hammer, which Asahi refuses to let her use on him, so they start running around the classroom till Yuko interrupts. Nagisa offers to erase memories of Yuko's identity too, but before she turns around, Asahi has bolted down the hallway. Nagisa chases after him and begs him to give in so she doesn't get a public spanking as punishment. Asahi fails to see how that's his problem, so Nagisa pulls the only card that will work and tells him she can erase the memories of Yuko too. Upon hearing this, Asahi agrees to be hammered for Yuko's sake, so Nagisa raises the hammer to possibly give him brain trauma when Yuko shows up to stop them. Asahi's commitment to simping moves her to tears, but she tells him not to go that far to keep her secret. They both apologize to each other while Nagisa watches the two lovebirds, so she admits defeat and trusts Asahi to keep her secret as well. As she walks away, she overhears Yuko teasing Asahi for having a crush on Nagisa, so they join forces to inform Yuko that she's an airhead. The next day, Asahi arrives at school only to find his friends tied up by the school's news reporter and evil queen, Mikan. Since she couldn't get anything out of his loyal friends, she decided to head to the source. She plays Asahi a recording of when he and Yuko were alone in the classroom, and asks what the nature of their relationship is. Asahi runs for it, reminding her of all the times she's caused him lots of suffering with her embarrassing articles. However, Mikan catches him and strings him up to be tortured. Asahi realizes she was the one who rigged his desk with those buns of death, but he insists that really didn't do anything fishy. Mikan turns on a hose to make it look like he's a pissing angel, then threatens to blackmail him with it, but when Asahi still doesn't let up, she decides she'll go ask Yuko herself. When Asahi reaches his classroom, he's relieved to see Mikan hasn't made it that far, but he also notices Yuko's not in the class either. Thinking she might have been withdrawn from school, Asahi rushes to the teacher and asks what happened to Yuko. She tells him that she's home with a cold, and since both of them have become such good friends, Asahi can do her the favor of delivering the class handouts to her. However, Mikan was right outside listening, so when Asahi tries to leave for Yuko's house, Mikan chases after him to get the next scoop. Suddenly, Asahi gets pulled into the bushes and finds it's Nagisa, who's trying to help him escape his enemies. Nagisa wonders why Asahi's making it a big deal, so he explains that he doesn't want Mikan to draw any attention to Yuko and risk her being removed from their school. Just then, Mikan rears her depraved head, so Nagisa tells Asahi to head over to Yuko's while she holds the evil queen down. When Asahi arrives at her home, she sees it swarming with bats, which isn't exactly subtle. Yuko pops out in her pajamas, which makes Asahi weak in the knees as she welcomes him in. He tries to decline till he realizes she'd been cleaning her room just for his visit. They head inside for some tea, and Yuko's so excited that her wings refuse to go back in. Yuko gets red in the face, thinking he's something special till she says it's her first time having a friend over and reminds him of his fate worse than death. After recovering, he realizes how normal her room looks and asks why she doesn't sleep in a coffin, so she says she can't afford items of luxury like that. She then warns Yuko not to open any closets, but he assures her he doesn't sniff clean panties, till he realizes it's because she stuffed all her mess in the closet. Asahi realizes he's all alone with a girl in her room, which is one small step for virgin cat, but suddenly he gets an emergency call from Nagisa, who says she's messed up. Mikan had made Nagisa wonder what a boy and a girl would be doing all alone, and thanks to the heinous amount of manga Nagisa had watched, she immediately lost focus and let her escape. Asahi thanks her for the tip when he hears a loud noise come from inside. When he goes to check, he discovers Yuko's closet finally vomited all over Mikan. That night, Mikan plots something evil when a strange voice tells her to cut it out, though she doesn't listen. The next day, Asahi finds a fake picture of him in Yuko's room, so he chases after Mikan to get her to stop making shit up. However, he runs into Yuko, who asks what's wrong, but Asahi straight up lies to her, making her sad that he's still a shit liar. After, Sakurada walks up to her and asks why Asahi's so worked up. Then he meets with Asahi himself and gives him some advice about Mikan. Later, Asahi finds Mikan on the roof, begs her not to post the article, and even goes on his knees. However, when Mikan continues to prove stubborn, Asahi remembers Sakurada's advice to just pretend it doesn't bother him and not give her the satisfaction. Asahi tells her to post the damn article if she wants, so Mikan changes her mind, disgusted by the idea of doing anything to please such a bottom boy. Sakurada appears and tells Asahi that Mikan isn't really evil and is just putting on an act, but Asahi wonders why she would do that in the first place. Meanwhile, Mikan looks sad about her article and tries to throw it on the floor when that strange voice tells her not to litter. It turns out Mikan has a pair of talking glasses, which is actually just possessed by the god of fortune. The god insists that if Mikan accepts her, she could make her dreams of Asahi come true. But Mikan claims she's okay with how things are and would rather have glasses that couldn't talk. The next day in class, the teacher confiscates a manga made out of your browser history and tries to hand the case over to Nagisa when they all realize she's nowhere to be found. Just then, a tiny Nagisa shoots at Asahi to get his attention and tell him to go outside. There she explains that she had forgotten to charge her external unit because she was eavesdropping on him and Yuko, talking about going 5 rounds. But Asahi says they were referring to a DVD she watched 5 times. Once they establish that Nagisa has brain rot, Asahi asks where her bigger version is anyway. She takes him to the girls' bathroom, which was the perfect hiding spot at the time, but it's not to make Asahi look like a cultured creep. He finally finds her body on the toilet and gets embarrassed till Nagisa reminds him it's basically a robot, so he carries her but can't help but think concerning thoughts when he feels how lifelike it is. Nagisa tells him to focus and leads him through the hallways till she sees how real she looks in his arms and goes red in the face. The school bell begins to ring, so they hurry up and head toward the infirmary, but while they wait to confirm it's empty, someone starts coming down the stairs. Thankfully, it's just Yuko, whose thick head thinks Asahi's about to get some action, but Mini Nagisa explains the situation and tells her to check the infirmary for them. Once it's clear, Asahi lays the Nagisa robot down and helps plug in her charger. Nagisa offers to check if the coast is clear before they leave, so she heads out, but soon after they hear a loud scream. When they run out, they find Mikan, who says she just found a tiny Nagisa, causing Yuko's wings to come loose from the shock. Thankfully, Mikan didn't notice the stupid girl, as she was too focused on wondering if the tiny Nagisa is a figurine. Asahi thinks of a way to rescue Nagisa before she loses her stamina, but Mikan is already on to her when she asks if Aizawa is the hallway fairy, one of the school's 7 wonders. They'd all try to deny it, including the dumbass Nagisa figurine, which Mikan could have sworn she saw moving. She accidentally drops Nagisa, but Nagisa uses her weapon to swing to safety and stick the landing, which only raises more red flags for Mikan, who is still asking questions because everyone in this school is an idiot. Asahi tries to distract her by asking what the 7 wonders are, so Mikan starts listing. There's the phantom horned lady, the culture-like god, the hallway fairy, and even the after-school vampire. They start sweating rivers at that last one, but when Mikan asks, they claim they know nothing about it. Mikan decides to check the figure's panties out, so Asahi thinks of what to do when Yuta shows up and complicates the situation. Mikan points out that all of the clothes can be removed, which is when Asahi panics and tells them to hand it over. Unfortunately, that didn't come out right, so Mikan, Yuko, and even Nagisa back away, thinking he's a closeted creep. He tries to save himself by saying he made the figurine, but it only gets worse as Maiken asks how long he's been stripping Nagisa down with his thirsty eyes. Asahi screws it all and just grabs Nagisa. Then he runs into the boys' bathroom where they wouldn't think to look, but Nagisa is already traumatized, thinking she's about to do some roleplay. Asahi tells her to snap out of it when he realizes Yu just followed him in, hoping to get in on the stripping action. Asahi busts out, runs for it, and hides in the storage room where he puts Nagisa in his pocket to hide. At that moment, a mysterious horned woman decides to make things interesting and snaps her fingers. Just then, Nagisa grows to human size and wonders what's going on while Asahi stares at her antenna. She tries to protect it while she hides the fact that it glows during courting activities. When they try to get up, Asahi ends up falling on top of Nagisa, making a noise that alerts the group outside. Nagisa gets red in the face from how close they are, but the moment is ruined when the guys outside decide to check the storage room. Asahi comes up with a plan and has Nagisa kick his ass out of the storage room, while claiming to have heard the rumor of the figurine which she's destroyed. While everyone's distracted, she slips away while Yuta goes to mourn the loss of the figurine with Asahi. Now that Nagisa's safe, the horned woman turns her back to normal, forcing her back into stealth mode. Later, she sees Yuko and Asahi have finally made up and feels glad for them, but she can't seem to shake a weird gloomy feeling. On a rainy day, Asahi and Yuko bump into each other on the way to school. When he asks why she didn't go before the sun came out, she explains that the forecast said it would be raining all day, so she has nothing to worry about. In reality, she simply slept off. When they arrive at school, Yuko looks like burnt toast, thanks to that useless weather forecast. Nagisa sits the idiots down to lecture them about avoiding sunlight when she asks if Yuko went sunbathing on the beach. Yuko shows that her tan lines are in the shape of her uniform, causing Asahi to activate his tool, while Nagisa smacks him in the face for looking. Nagisa offers to train Yuko to avoid her enemy during the day, so they head outside to begin their first task. Nagisa tells her to jump from one shadow to the next without getting hit by sunlight, but somehow the girls are surprised to discover it's impossible. For the first time, Asahi is the only one with 2 independent brain cells, while the girls fight to share one brain cell as they continue the pointless training. The next morning, Asahi walks to school thinking about all the research he had done last night. Surprisingly, vampires are as likely to die as nudes in Fortnite. Asahi meets up with the girls and sees Yuko is back to normal, so Nagisa tells Yuko to show him the results of her training. Yuko starts running with all seriousness, using the shadows as her cover. However, they run into a food stand with a man selling garlic, and Asahi remembers from his book that vampires can go blind from it. He rushes to the man and eats all his garlic, so the old guy praises him for trying to keep his stamina up for his girlfriend. Suddenly, he notices a tree hugger trying to sell Yuko a cross, and Asahi thinks she'll turn into dust if she gets too close, so he grabs the cross and throws it far away. However, a random dog brings the cross back, to Asahi's horror, but Yuko pets the dog fondly and explains it only makes her a little anxious to look at them. Afterward, the girls try to block out Asahi's garlic breath as Yuko explains that garlic only makes her eyes water. Just then, they reach a part of the journey with no buildings to act as shade, ruining Yuko's no-tan plan. She gives up, so Nagisa and Asahi start suggesting bizarre ways she can protect herself from the sun. Asahi tries to ask if she's ever tried sunscreen, but Nagisa insists that even Yuko is not dumb enough to not have tried that. Yuko tries to play it cool, but by the next gym class, they see her out in the sun without a tan, and she finally confesses to being dumb enough. Some days later, Asahi waits for Yuko at an amusement park, wondering if she's asked him on a date. When Yuko arrives, she informs him that Nagisa won't be joining them, which means her plan to hook them up has failed. But this makes Asahi wonder what makes up the space in her skull. Meanwhile, Nagisa relaxes at home, not wanting to be a third wheel, but she can't seem to shake a strange feeling in her. Back at the park, Asahi and Yuko go on their first ride, which leaves Yuko shaking like a faulty washing machine. Asahi starts to feel bad, till he realizes he's just awoken an adrenaline junkie, and they end up going on more rides. Afterward, Yuko tells him she'd always wanted to come here since her parents had a date there. Her father is a vampire while her mom is a human, and they happen to go to the same school Yuko goes to now. Yuko thinks it's familiar how Asahi is keeping her secret like her mom did for her dad before they fell in love. She gets embarrassed and deflects by taking him into a haunted house. Surprisingly, Yuko's pretty scared, so she holds onto Asahi for protection, even though he'd snap like a twig if a real monster showed up. Suddenly, a vampire wannabe comes out, threatening to suck their blood, so Yuko starts to lecture him on the benefits of abstinence, which becomes the scariest thing in the house. Afterward, Asadi asks if there are other monsters like wolfmen or invisible men where she comes from. She confirms there are and says she's childhood friends with a wolfman. Meanwhile, Yuko's father meets with said wolfman and sends him to check on Yuko, as he knows he didn't birth the brightest tool in the shed, so she's probably revealed her secret. Meanwhile, Asahi and Yuko head home from the park when they run into a knockoff Kirishima named Shiru, who asks Yuko why she never calls. Asahi figures the alt vibes must mean he's the wolfman childhood friend, while Yuko asks him what he's doing there. Razormouth starts picking on Asahi for having the audacity to look at him, so Yuko distracts him by throwing a stick. After he notices the park behind them and thinks they were on a date, so he wishes them happiness together and turns around to go jump off a bridge. When Asahi sees he's also a friend-zoned prisoner like him, he assures him they're in the same sinking ship. Yuko finally catches on 2 years later and confirms they're not dating, as she calls Asahi her friends enough times for it to physically hurt. After that's cleared up, Shiru asks Asahi why he wasn't scared when he saw his fangs. He figures Asahi already knows about their kind and informs Yuko that she's got to get dragged back home now. Asahi panics and drags Shiru's face to distract him, then insists he didn't notice anything strange about him. Shiru insists that his fangs are hard to miss and outs himself as a wolfman, so Asahi tries to claim he only just found out. But his face doesn't do him any favors. When Asahi doubts if he's a real wolfman, Shiru looks at the moon to prove it. A bright light shines and Shiru suddenly turns into a red-haired woman named Shio, which is her true form. Asahi looks confused, so Shio commends him on finally figuring something out. But it's the fact that she has zero plot support, so she gigs into Yuko's fun bag to borrow hers, while Asahi nosebleeds his way to a coma. Meanwhile, Nagisa is still in extreme denial over her feelings toward Asahi and Yuko's potential hookup, so she makes up an excuse to go over to Yuko's and see how things went. Back at Yuko's house, Yuko properly introduces Asahi to Shio, who's also Shiru, but she warns him to be careful since she's of the culture. Asahi starts to question if Shio is really a girl since he's been down this road before, so Shio offers to prove it to him, while Nagisa smacks her to behave. When that doesn't work, she sits on Asahi's other side, plotting. Asahi tries to distract the thirsty wolf girl and asks if she's still conscious when she wolfs out. She explains that since she's the main personality, she's always conscious, but when she takes over, Shiru isn't. This reminds her of that face grab Asahi pulled earlier, so she asks him to recreate it, and starts to lean closer till Yuko pulls out a picture of the moon and forces her to transform. Shiru pops out seriously confused, but he insists on dragging Yuko back home. Asahi gets in the way, so Shiru threatens to rearrange his face, then Asahi pulls out the moon picture and forces him to transform. At that moment, Nagisa arrives and sees the bright light, but when she heads inside, she sees the red woman and thinks it's the wrong house. However, when she confirms she's not seeing double, she goes back in only to see Asahi getting down with another woman who isn't even Yuko. She runs out and Asahi tries to call out for her, but ends up copping a feel of Shio's milk balloons, which cues the nosebleed. Yuko calls him a degenerate, and while Asahi tries to explain, he flashes the moon and turns Shio into Shiru, just in time for Nagisa to walk in and question what horror her eyes had witnessed. Nagisa runs all the way home while Shiru focuses on the fresh nosebleed, which means Asahi must have done something to his body. Asahi tries to ignore how wrong that sounds when the moon picture comes floating back down and transforms Shiru yet again. Shio is about to get it on when Yuko starts protesting, making Shio suspicious. She uses her pleasure hills to send Asahi back into that coma. She then asks Yuko why she's really bothered, but Yuko continues with her excuses. Shio calls her thick-headed and says she'll be leaving before Shiru returns and completes the mission. The next day, Yuko and Asahi clear up the misunderstanding with Nagisa, but when they head to class, the teacher announces that a new student will be joining them, and it turns out to be the culture queen herself. The next day, Shio turns Asahi into a blood fountain, as she rubs up against him, while Yuta and Nagisa almost lose their minds from opposite forms of jealousy. Asahi manages to escape and runs into Yuko, who asks him why his nose is red. He brushes it off when they suddenly notice a pink-haired horned girl casually walking by. They start to follow after her, wondering if she's human or not, but after bursting a baseball and attracting more crows than the Night's Watch, Asahi's pretty sure of it. Yuko loses focus and asks to pat her head, but the girl doesn't seem to mind. When she introduces herself as Akane, they realize she has the same last name as Akari, so they figure she must be her little sister or something. When Asahi tries to ask about the horn, her aura changes to something dark and sinister till she pulls it from her head and says it's fake. The two of them are relieved as she walks off with an evil grin till she bumps into Akari. They start arguing about Akane walking around the school, so Akari threatens to pull her horns right off, making Akane reveal that it was simply an illusion earlier. Later, they all head inside and Akane reveals that she's a thousands of years old demon and is Akari's great-grandmother, as well as headmaster of the school. Yuko continues to treat her like a little kid, causing Akane to scold her for not respecting her elders just because she's some airhead vampire. Asahi worries about Yuko's secret, while Yuko taunts Akane with treats. Asahi asks Akari if they always knew about Yuko's secret, and she tells him students have to fill out paperwork, so naturally, they find out. Yuko still refuses to believe the pipsqueak is an adult and Akari agrees that it's hard to believe, angering Akane. However, before she can unleash hell, Akari threatens to deduct the damages from her salary and Akane sobers right up. Yuko tries to console her, but when Akane calls her a babyish little brat, Yuko insists that she's more of a cool beauty. Akane laughs at her delusion, which ticks Yuko off, so the two hell spawns start to emit murderous auras till Yuko suggests a competition to determine who's hotter. Akane sets up an elaborate stage with Shio as the host and Asahi as the hostage judge. Whoever can make Asahi's nose bleed the most wins. Yuko goes first with a Sailor Moon pose that does nothing for Asahi. Next, Akane tries shaking those premature bingo wings, but Asahi stays drier than the set aura. Shio decides to show them how to get a boy wet, and with her move, Asahi starts gushing rivers. The girls try a swimsuit competition next, but yet again, neither can get Asahi going while Shio sends him shooting effortlessly. The girls try over and over again, but Shio says winning while Asahi is in dire need of life support. Tired of this zero competition, Shio gives Asahi one last feel of Pleasure Hills and walks off. Since Yuko and Akane are somehow less hotter than they started, Yuko suggests they compete to see who can eat the most of Maiken's buns of death. Akane foolishly agrees and they start going for it, while Akari talks to the only other semi-adult there. She commends him for keeping Yuko's secret, even if it's for ulterior motives. Finally, the girls reach the last bun, which is so hot that Akane loses control of her demon powers and the entire gym explodes. When Asahi and Akari crawl out of the rubble, she wishes him good luck with keeping the two lunatics in check. Some days later, Akari tells Asahi that he's got to do a cooking class for the date he missed, so she shows him to a room with the girls. Their task is to make curry that's even the least bit edible, which should be easy enough between 4 people. Nisa takes charge and pulls out a recipe she'd gotten from one of those mangas again. Then she gets to work and starts chopping and mixing till she makes a chocolate cake. Nagisa's tiny brain fails to understand how she messed up, so she angrily smashes the table, causing the cake to fly out the window onto Akane's horn. When Akane takes a bite, she considers begging God to let her back into heaven so she can have more of that cake, while Mike incites her and follows her to get an interview. Inside, Nagisa apologizes for messing up, so Yuko encourages her and says they're in it together. Asahi joins in the hand huddle, while Shio adds her freehanding melons to the mix, giving Asahi something to bleed about. The group gets to work, and with everyone pitching in, they're finally able to make a decent curry. Nagisa has an epiphany and realizes that sticking to the plan has probably been a waste of time, so Yuko tries to cheer her up by suggesting they elevate the curry even more. Asahi and Shio try to warn them not to tamper with it, but they aren't loud enough to overcome the clanking sounds in their brains. Meanwhile, Maiken hands Akane a bag of treats, hoping to bribe her into getting an interview at the cost of her monthly allowance. Maiken's glasses try to warn her that she's getting played when Akari comes around the corner and asks why she's still in school. Just then, Maiken turns back and sees Akane escaping with her goodie bag, but when Akane reaches the hallway, Akari drags her by the horn and scolds her. They decide to check on their dinner, expecting that curry is easy enough to make, but when they open the door, they find Asahi and Shio passed out while Nagisa and Yuko argue over who made the curry radioactive. Later that night, Akari fights for her life against Akane, who demands to have another taste of Nagisa's chocolate cake. When Akari tells her to ask Nagisa herself, Akane activates her demon powers and threatens to destroy the world. The next day, Akari calls the girls back and asks them to remake the cake to save the world. They don't buy it at first till they learn that an asteroid is approaching Earth at an alarming speed. The rest of the world panics and tries to figure out what to do while the girls get cooking. Akane is happy that her master plan is working till she loses focus and struggles to control the asteroid. Just then, Nagisa finishes some chocolate truffles, making Akane drool till Nagisa knocks the truffles away, insisting they're not good enough. Akane tries to go to them when Akari holds her back and insists they let her cook. When Akane threatens her with the asteroid, Akari says it'll also disappear if Akane passes out, so she ties the little demon up and tells her to get ready to eat everyone but Nagisa's chocolate. First up is Shio's naughty banana with a side of flies. Akari shoves the banana down Akane's throat, which is the closest she's been to hell since she left. Next up is Yuko's radioactive chocolate curry, which makes Akane's vision blurry, but when she manages to stay conscious, she figures the asteroid will hit before she can taste any more poison. Just then, Mikan walks in, and when she learns what's going on, she decides to pay Akane back for the stunt she pulled earlier. Akane and Akari gamble on who will win this fight, while the rest of the world spends their final moments praying for a miracle. Akane busts out her clones to try to stop the girls from poisoning her, while Asahi runs to the cooking room to be with his loved ones in the end. However, the asteroid diverts at the last minute, and Asahi finds all the girls passed out of the room. Some days later, Sakurada advises Asahi to ask Yuko to the pool since it's about time. Asahi believes he's grown enough balls to ask her out, so he goes for it. Unfortunately, Shio breaks the news that the girl can't swim. When Asahi reveals that he can't really swim either, Yuko assumes he just wants to practice, so she agrees but asks the girls to come along as their swimming instructors. The pool date comes and even the boys show up, happy to see the girls in their bathing suits. Shio starts the first swimming lesson and tells them to start by locating the cutest girl they can find and wait till she gets in the water. Then, when she gets in the pool, you get a lock on her southward cheeks and let your hands do the rest. Yuna gets excited to try the cultured lesson, but after attacking Pinocchio, he gets arrested for assault and taken away.
Mission failed. We'll get 'em next time.
Shio starts her second lesson by pulling down Nagisa's bathing suit, earning her a poop-sized swelling on her sick head. Nagisa takes over and starts by getting Yuko in the pool. However, the gallon's worth of waterproof sunscreen she put on helps guide Asahi's eyes to her promised land and give him a nosebleed. Later, they try kicking lessons, and when Nagisa tries to keep Asahi up, he goes red at her touch, making Yuko tease them for getting naughty. Nagisa almost drowns Asahi as she tries to deny the allegations, so she ends up sulking out of the pool. Asahi and Yuko decide to practice by themselves, so Asahi holds her hand as she kicks. The others watch the happy couple and Nagisa starts feeling bad when Mikan shows up to the pool. She joins them to watch and comments on how Yuko is different from the other girls he usually falls for. So maybe this time it's love. An announcement comes in that the pool will be closing in 30 minutes, so the kids start preparing to leave while Yuko whispers something in Asahi's ears. As they all head home later, Asahi comes up with a terrible excuse and says he has to leave so the others think it's suspicious, since Yuko gave the same bullshit excuse some moments ago. However, the boys hope that Asahi is finally able to man up and get some. Later, Asahi meets with Yuko, who leads him into a secret entrance at school so they can do some more training. She says she wants to practice as thanks to everyone who helped her learn, making Asahi remember why he's been simping for her this whole time. They get in, and now that it's just the two of them, Yuko feels free to release her fangs and wings as she practices. When they take a break, she tells him that her mom and dad used to come here to practice secretly, which makes Asahi realize that their afternoon practice could have exposed Yuka. However, she assures him that she doesn't mind risking exposure as she gets to meet more people and make more friends. Now, thanks to Asahi, she loves going to school. As she thanks him, she accidentally uses his first name, making both of them embarrassed, so she tries to brush it off by going back to practice. Meanwhile, Akane watches them from the principal's office, and it reminds her of the last vampire-human romance she witnessed in that very pool. As she watches the two kids mess around in the water, she wonders what love story they'll show her this time. Some days later, Asahi invites Yuko to lunch, and though she worries about revealing her fangs, her empty stomach wins out in the end. They meet up with the guys and Yuko manages to keep her fangs hidden by covering her mouth and talking. However, when her wings pop out, Asahi almost has a heart attack, but there's no way to warn her in front of the guys. Thankfully, none of the guys seem to notice, so Asahi relaxes till Yuta sends him a text. Luckily or unluckily, it turns out to be a dirty text about the waitress, which gives Asahi an idea. He uses the phone to warn Yuko about her wings, making Yuta think she must be angry at him. He pulls out a cross to make peace, but that just makes things worse. Suddenly, bats come out of nowhere and Asahi closes the window, overwhelmed by the back-to-back chaos. The waitress turns out to be Mikan, who offers Yuko some of her newly improved F-buns. Asahi knows those buns would out her immediately, so he offers to eat them instead and Yuta joins him, because he's an idiot. While the boys go through hell, the other two try to tell Yuka how much Asahi does for her. But when she wishes him happiness with Nagisa, the boys finally understand that she's dense. Later at school, Mikan's glasses go missing, and when the others see that it's a big deal for her, they offer to help her look. Nagisa helps her look outside when they suddenly see Akane with them. They chase her into the school where they run into Asahi and inform him of the situation. Akane decides to toy with them a bit and produce multiple glasses, asking them to guess which the real one is till Asahi points out that the dumbass still has the real glasses on. Akane then produces clones and tries to pull the same stunt again till he reminds her she's the only one with glasses on. Akane's glitching brain circuit finally comes on and she gives all the clones glasses and runs off. The kids chase after them till a door opens up and Akari grabs Akane angrily. She pulls all the demons in with her and leaves the glasses outside the door as she gets the spanking. Asahi leaves to get Yuko, but while the girls are alone, Nagisa accidentally hears the talking glasses. The girls head outside where Mikan explains the God of Fortune situation, but the girls find it hard to believe. The god offers to prove it with a series of signs, but the girls insist they're just random coincidences. That's when the god pulls out her ultimate proof: access to Mikan's memories, which means she knows that Asahi was the one who gave Mikan those glasses. Mikan tries to shut the glasses up, but it rats her out more and reminds her of the time she said she wanted to marry Asahi. Nagisa finally realizes Mikan is in the same river of denial as she is till she realizes that's as good as admitting her own feelings and freaks out. Just then, Asahi and Yuko show up, so the god warns her that if she puts on the glasses in front of him, she'll confess to Asahi for her. When Asahi and Yuko reach them, Mikan starts having a panic attack, so Nagisa tries to distract them by coming out of her external unit. However, Yuko in turn tries to protect Nagisa by pulling out her wings as a distraction. Asahi jumps in front of Mikan to distract her from the two bumbling idiots, but this freaks her out into wearing the glasses. However, before it's too late, Nagisa grabs them and wears them herself, then suddenly, the glasses announce she's in love with Asahi. Some days later, Asahi and Nagisa realize they've been set up on a date to the festival while Yuko and Shio watch over them. You could cut through the awkwardness like sliced bread, but Asahi assures Nagisa that Yuko would be somewhere in the festival gobbling down anything she can find. They head in and Asahi tries his best to make sure Nagisa enjoys herself, so they head to a shooting booth to start. Shio notices Yuko's grim expression after a while and asks about it, but Yuko's simply getting lightheaded from starving. Suddenly, Mikan shows up and asks what we're doing, and Yuko notices Asahi and Nagisa have disappeared. Mikan offers to help find them, claiming it's only for the scoop. Meanwhile, Asahi and Nagisa continue to enjoy the festival as Nagisa explains that even though their planets are very different, they're kind of the same, that everyone lives their lives to the fullest. Asahi is glad she's having a good time, making Nagisa shy, so she tries to distract by getting some ice cream. Just then, they spot Yuko at another stand and chase after her, but when Nagisa trips, Asahi reaches out to break her fall, causing her to land on top of him, while his eyes are conveniently covered in ice cream. Nagisa's hair gets stuck on his button, but as she struggles to get free, she realizes that ever since that god of misfortune said it out loud, she's come to realize she actually likes him. As Nagisa cuddles up to the fool, everyone stares at them, including Yuko, whose snail-paced brain finally catches up to her heart. The next day in school, Nagisa avoids Asahi like a plague, so Asahi goes to find Yuko, but runs into Mikan instead. Mikan warns him that if he doesn't clear things up with Yuko, he could lose her forever, so he runs to find her. Meanwhile, Yuko is seated in the principal's office since Akari didn't know what to do with a catatonic vampire. Akane starts teasing Yuko for losing her man to another woman, so Yuko snaps out of it to insist they're just friends. Akane assures her no man is kind to a woman without ulterior motives, but Yuko refuses to agree. When Akane asks what Yuko feels for him, she gets flustered and leaves the room. On her way out of school, a horned Asadi comes up to her and tries to explain himself, but Yuko can immediately tell it's just Akane messing with her. Suddenly, a horned Yuko appears and starts making googly eyes with Asadi, so Yuko flees the scene in denial. On her way, she continues to get tormented by several Yuko and Asadi, till she insists she's had enough. Just then, a horned Asadi calls her attention and insists he doesn't have feelings for Nagisa, and it's so convincing that Yuko starts to lose her. Horned Asadi pushes her to the wall and asks if he can kiss her, making Yuko squirm until Akari shows up in a demonic rage. She flings Akane away, and they continue their usual bickering while the real Asadi shows up. When he tries to clear the air about the festival, he suddenly notices Akari running up to him. She smacks him in the face, thinking he's Akane, but he assures her he has no idea what's going on. While the chaos continues, Yuko decides she can't take it anymore and runs away. The next day, Asahi tells the boys how Yuko has been avoiding him like a plague, just as Yuko also confides in Shio, who's more interested in climbing up her skirt. When Yuko tells her to focus, Shio advises her to be honest with herself, but loses focus on her holy mountains yet again. The boys advise Asahi to simply walk home with Yuko today, so he takes her advice. Meanwhile, Nagisa is down in the dumps when Akane approaches her and offers to help her in exchange for something. She prints out a picture from the festival, but before she can finish her offer, Akari shows up, reminds her to stop messing with the students, and drags her demon ass away, leaving Nagisa with the photo. Nagisa plans to keep it for personal use when Asahi and the guys show up. Nagisa panics and tries to hide the picture when Mikan walks up, always ready to disgrace her target. They battle it out for the picture, and it ends up flying into Asahi's hands, giving him a heart attack. Out of nowhere, Nagisa pulls out 2 ice cream cones to blind him again while she grabs the picture and eats it to destroy the evidence. Blind Asahi somehow leans onto the wall with Nagisa, just as Yuko walks up and sees it happen. She wanted to walk home with him, but after seeing him do the wall slam with Nagisa, she takes the hint and runs off. Later, Yuko soaks off, thinking about what her real feelings are while her dad blows up her phone. That night, Asahi has a dream where he meets Yuko on the rooftop, and she tells him she's got to quit school cause her dad found out, so he's relieved to wake up from the nightmare. The next day, Yuko and Asahi bump into each other awkwardly, and Yuko asks him to meet her out on the rooftop later. Asahi goes straight to his cheerleaders for advice, and once again, they advise him to confess before she can reject him. Not like that went well the first time. Nagisa overhears the plan to confess along with Mikan, who finally realizes Nagisa's in love with Asahi too. She warns Nagisa that Asahi seems pretty serious about Yuko and tells her to make up her mind, so she doesn't have any regrets. Asahi heads to the rooftop with the same letter from day one, but he suddenly gets stopped by Nagisa, who intends to stop him from confessing by whacking him with a shovel. As she chases after him, Asahi can't understand why Nagisa is trying to end his life, but she can't bring herself to tell him how she feels, so she settles for selfishly stopping them from getting together. Asahi manages to evade the life-threatening attacks and even climbs past the barricade of desks, but when he reaches the rooftop, he sees Yuko being whisked away by a giant bat as she apologizes. Asahi realizes she was never calling him for a rejection, she just wanted to say goodbye. At that moment, Asahi asks for Nagisa's help in bringing Yuko back. Moments later, Asahi is in a car with Akari, Nagisa, and the rest of the pirated fairy tale creatures. Shio says the huge bat was probably a family member, so Asahi tells Akari to step on it. Akari reminds him she gave up her weekly beer subscription to buy this new car, and would not be risking it, so Akane tells him to leave it to her. She knocks Akari out and takes over the car to fly them there, hopefully before crumbling to pieces. Later, Akari sits them down to ask where her brand new car is, so Akane takes the blame for turning it into a rust bucket. Akane gets chased by Akari once again, getting the dead weight out of the way. Afterward, the gang heads inside and starts creeping around till a giant menacing vampire appears and Shio introduces him as Yuko's dad. Asahi begs him to give Yuko back, making her dad wonder what the hell he's talking about. Yuko comes out just in time to witness this misfire, so Nagisa throws a garlic ball at the giant while Asahi grabs Yuko and runs. Yuko tries to clear up the misunderstanding by explaining her dad only came to get her cause her mom was sick. That's when the idiot says he thought her dad had found out he knew her secret in earshot of the giant vampire. Yuko's dad finally knows what he should be mad about and starts chasing after them. Asadi runs through Nagisa's bag for something to help, and wouldn't you know, a good old banana peel does the trick. As the giant falls, Yuki hides Asahi in her room. Asahi apologizes for finally living up to his name and telling her father, but Yuko tells him it's fine and apologizes for acting crazy lately cause since she's a vampire she can't blame a period. Asahi finally clears the air about Nagisa and the festival, but before they can have a heartwarming moment, her dad busts the door open and tries to break through the barrier. Just then his wife, a force even more terrifying than him, shows up and chases after him. Asahi wonders why her mom doesn't seem sick, so Yuko explains that her dad was just overreacting about a cold she had, which is why he whisked her out of school. Now that they're back alone, Yuko gets embarrassed as she tells him not to look around, but when she trips, he tries to catch her, and they end up in prime baby-making position. Nagisa catches them in the act and tries to hammer his memories out of him, which gives him an idea. They meet with Yuko's father while her mom eavesdrops, and Asahi offers to erase his memory in exchange for letting Yuko stay in school. He agrees, and Asahi asks Nagisa to do the honors, but she chickens out at the last second. Asahi decides to do it himself, but before he can, Yuko jumps into him and stops him, reminding him that she'd still have her memories, and she can't stand to lose him because he's her precious. Before she can finish her statement, her dad comes crashing down thanks to the hammer, who finally found a worthy victim. The next morning, Akari picks them up in a brand new car from Akane's salary, but as Yuko's about to leave, her dad stubbornly looks away, claiming not to care about the stupid brat. However, when the car starts moving, he softens up and chases after the car, waving as Yuko tells him she'll see him soon. After Asahi asks what Yuko was about to say the night before, but Yuko weasels her way out of it, so Asahi promises to never try and erase his memories again. That's it for this video. Comment plug that hole if you enjoyed the video. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video over here.